ngayong araw na ito. Mga kapatid, nais po natin welcome ang ating kapatid, si Brother Finn. Hindi ko siya masyadong kilala. At hindi ko siya kilala. Ang nakakilala na todo sa kanya ay Sister Anna. Dahil asawa po niya. Mga kapatid. So siya na po ang mag-introduce ng kanyang sarili later on habang siya nag-share. Paano siya nag-arrive? You can share how you arrive in this research and videos and many other things. I don't know how you do it, but I believe God will enlighten all of us this very day, this very morning, this whole day. Okay? Magandang umaga sa bawat isa. I-welcome po natin ang sama-sama ang mag-asawang ito, Brother Finn and Sister Anna, please.
Thank you. Well, it is a pleasure to be here at our second Rise Philippines Full Conference. The first one was in Aurora, and what a beautiful place. We really enjoyed it. The crowd wasn't quite as large, but you know what? It doesn't matter. It's not about size, it's about substance. And that's what we try to focus on, even on the channel. I want to introduce my beautiful Ilocano Filipina wife, Anna.
Magandang umaga po. Ang daming hindi pa. So ngayon po, nasa YouTube po para mas maintindihan niyo lahat ng mga natrabaho po namin na ibinigay ng Diyos sa amin. So, anyway, ito na po ang ating the best FBI na butik. My husband, thank you.
Or you could call me Petro. We have this running joke that I would change my name when we moved to the Philippines. So we've been floating some different. And today, I'm going to prove to you something that took us a journey of 40 videos. But today, I'm going to give you just a taste, but enough for you to walk out of here knowing exactly where you can find the Philippines in the Bible. Because it's there. Not once, many times over. You're going to find that this land is the most significant of all lands on earth. Even more significant than Israel. Because of its incredible history that actually goes all the way back to the beginning. Do we have the slides? Now, one thing that we always set our foundation on, and you're going to see that today, is Scripture. You know, we go into history, geography, science, archaeology, everything, but we start with the Bible. Because we believe when 1 Thessalonians 5:21 tells us to prove all things, hold fast that which is good. See, we're going to throw out the bad and keep what's good. And that goes for everything. You know, all of us, look, I went through seminary, and I taught things for years that weren't right sometimes, especially when it comes to biblical geography. I just didn't know. But we can know. And today, you will leave here knowing. And then we encourage you to go and test it even more. There are 40 videos there. There's plenty of other content. YouTube is not the only place. There's books. There's maps, there's things that you can research, and you can prove this for yourself. And I don't care what your age is. I don't care if you're 12 years old or 5 years old. These are things you can know. It doesn't matter. Above all things, relationship. What we want for the Philippines is we want to see that relationship restored. That relationship with the God, the creator of all things. We're going to show you things today that may surprise some of you. But nothing we're showing you is new. This is stuff the world knew all the way up until the 1800s. And then it was covered up and it was lost. So, what we're looking to do is restore the history of the Philippines, which is right there. This was not a mystery to Jose Rizal. It was not a mystery to Columbus. It was no mystery to the Jesuits that came with the explorers. They wrote about this often. But the narrative changed, and it got twisted to support an agenda that was very obvious. We have been working for 3 years now on this project and others. And we started with the simple notion that the Philippines is fear. And when you see where else that leads, wow. In the background is a movie clip. There's actually a guy who was a producer for Oprah who actually was trying to raise the money to create a movie based on Solomon's Gold series. And he was unsuccessful, and that's okay. Who knows, maybe someday, right? Because that would be a great medium to share this message. And he was talking about the Queen of Sheba, who comes from Ophir, which is the Philippines. See, the Philippines is in the Bible, but it's in the Bible with its ancient names. So, we can get it to go forward here. So, as we continue to search, continue to search, and continue to search, we started with Ophir. And guess what? The Queen of Sheba story is right in the middle of that passage, so then it leads to the Queen of Sheba, who came from Ophir. We'll show you. Which leads to Tarshish, whose ships were used to get there. So all of these things tie together. But Ophir is a real place. And we know that because we found archaeology in Israel, Tel Qassil, which is modern-day Tel Aviv. In 1946, they found a pottery shard that said, it's not advancing. So, there we go. The gold of Ophir. Okay, so what do we know? Ophir's a real place and a land of gold. 2 or 4 Beth Haram, 30 shekels. Now, this is really interesting because some scholars will even go so far as to say, well, I'm not sure that Solomon actually existed. In other words, I don't believe the Bible is what they're really saying. Okay, this proves he did. Because guess who built Beth Haram, where this gold of Ophir would have been needed? Solomon did. In 2 Chronicles 8. We start our journey in Scripture. 1 Kings 9:26. And King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezion-Geber. We'll show you a map. Which is beside Elath on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. And Hiram sent in the navy his servants, shipmen that had knowledge of the sea, with the servants of Solomon. Where did they go? And they came to Ophir. Notice the story progresses in chronological order. He builds a navy, a port on the Red Sea, and ships. They take a journey. They arrive in Ophir. And fetched from thence gold 420 talents, and brought to King Solomon. Now here's the funny thing. 420 talents of gold. This has to come from a land that is extremely abundant in gold, because 420 talents in today's value is $588 million US. That's $500 million. That is no joke. Now, this was built, you can see the arrow, the red arrow at the top, which, I guess I don't have a pointer to it, is there a pointer? Yeah, okay. So, up here you see Tyre. Okay, notice it's on the Mediterranean Sea. And Hiram, king of Tyre, ran the largest navy be on earth at this time. So remember that. So Solomon was wise, right? I mean, isn't that what he was known for? So why would he build a port down here when he already has this? Some people say, oh, well, you know, Tarshish is in Spain. Well, wouldn't he just have hired Hiram to go from here to here through the Mediterranean instead of building a brand new navy of ships, a brand new port, and going all the way down around Africa? That makes no sense. That makes no sense. There were no pirates back then. There was no reason to do that. And that's because he didn't. He didn't. What he was doing is he was heading east. Okay? Now that's just using a little bit of logic. But wait till you see where the scripture goes, because it comes right out and says this. The historians tell you that the Phoenicians, which is Hiram, king of Tyre, okay, that they traded only here, only around the Mediterranean Sea, and nowhere else, right? Notice what's missing from this. The Bible story of the port on the Red Sea. See a big question mark there. It's not there. Why isn't it there? These are supposed to be historians, right? Then you'll find Bible maps. Pastor Paul showed you some. But I'll show you a few more. Remember that when you look in the back of your Bible, even your King James Bible, yeah, the King James was translated in 1611, but those maps were not. They were not created then. They're based on modern scholarship. And modern scholarship does not know ancient history. That's why you saw on some of the maps that Pastor Paul showed lots of question marks. Because they just don't know. It's okay that they don't know. It's okay. All right? What's not okay is writing an entire book or journal entry or anything else and saying, you know, that Ophir has to be in wherever, and it can't possibly be according to the Bible. This map is a perfect example. If you look at this map, you actually, they say that Ophir is right here in Saudi Arabia. Guess what? That's based on a place in Saudi Arabia named Ophirah. Ooh, that sounds very familiar. That might be the same thing, right? Except for Ophirah means towards Ophir, or to Ophir, or a great big giant arrow saying, that way. Solomon's navy went right by here. And they did. Then you see these kinds of things. See, there's 2 Shebas in Genesis 10, not just one. So when a scholar then sees Sheba and they say, oh, that's got to be a Sheba in Ethiopia. Well, there is a Sheba in Ethiopia, that's true, from Cush, the son of Ham. But that's the wrong Sheba. And we'll show you in this story, the other Sheba, the queen of Sheba came from, is actually nowhere near Saudi Arabia, ever. Not even possible biblically. Now, what's weird, though, is look at this. They've got the 2 different Shebas living in the same place. So what is this? If you're named Sheba, you have to live right there in Saudi Arabia. You can't live anywhere else. No. You know, Noah divided the earth. And when he divided the earth, he actually set forth a law. Shem's sons can't live in Ham's territory. Ham's sons can't live in Shem's territory. It's pretty easy. Well, here's the problem. One Sheba is from Shem. The other Sheba is from Ham. They cannot live in the same place. Impossible. Yet, you'll see this ignored all the time. You'll also see Havilah, which is Ophir's other brother, but there's also an Havilah, which is son of Cush. So it gets confusing when you look at it, we admit, but it's easy to distinguish. Because you see, Ophir had a brother named Havilah. That's from Shem, and this has that Havilah living in Africa. No, he didn't. He never lived in Africa. He never lived near Africa. If he did, then he should experience a curse because he's living in the wrong land. See, biblical geography is Extremely clear. Extremely. Now that's the Ophir. I already covered that, so we'll skip that. So here's another map, and there's all kinds of stuff on here. You see this is Ophir's here in Saudi, it's down here in Africa. No, it's over here in Iran. Is it? Which is it? There's only one Ophir in all of Scripture. And this is what makes this much easier to track. Because there aren't a lot of Ophirs. There's just one in all of Scripture. So he can be tracked. We can follow him, and we do. You'll find maps here. Here's Havilah, Sheba, over and over again. And these are Bible maps. These are reputable Bible maps. Now, when they get to, Israel in the days of Messiah, their mapping is pretty good. But in these days, they do not have it down. Here's the King James. If you go online and check with the King James Atlas, Bible Atlas, this is what they'll show you. Ophir is in India. Sheba is in Africa. Wait a minute. Ham owned Africa. Wrong, Sheba. Tarshish is in Spain. Well, nobody told the king of Spain, because the king of Spain spent an awful lot of money trying to find a western route through the Americas to get to Tarshish in the east. So why would he do that? Over and over again, unless there's more to it, and there is. So Ophir is a person in the Bible, and we can track him. Because in the Table of Nations, he gives us an exact location of where they lived at the time of the Tower of Babel, and then where they migrated to from there. And although these words may not seem familiar in modern geography, these can be identified. So Joktan, you have Eber. Eber had two sons, Peleg. Peleg's the father of the Hebrews, the Israelite Hebrews. And Joktan is the father of the other Hebrews, which are his sons. So Ophir is the son of Joktan. But the Bible tells us where they lived. So this is not a mystery. They lived in a place called Mesha. As thou goest unto Sephar, a mount of the east. So Mesha, what could that possibly be? Well, Mesha, we find, is Mashhad, Iran. So they lived in Iran. I'm going to prove this, though. They lived in Iran, and then they traveled from there to Sephar, a mount of the east. The book of Jubilees, which is a book found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, is really a book of geography. So we use this book for history, for geography. And it really narrows this down. And by the way, Josephus confirms this exact thing. And for our Foxad, now our Foxad is the great-great-great-grandfather of Joktan, Ophir's father. Okay? So we're saying this is the land that he inherited. Two places. First was the region of the Chaldees, which is east of the Euphrates. Now, is Saudi Arabia east of the Euphrates or west? It's west. So it doesn't fit. The second land that they inherited was what we call Israel today. Was the land of Canaan in those days. Now, Canaan stole that land, which we show at the bottom. Canaan stole the land, and he was even cursed by his father and some of his brothers for doing so. Because again, if you go into someone else's land, you would have a curse. Now, here's what's neat about this. It only gives two places where our Foxad, Joktan, Ophir, could have lived. One, Iran, Media, Persia. The other, Israel, but that was stolen. So X that out. That means they only lived in one place, Iran. Now this is well contested. Josephus says the same thing. Here's Mashhad, Iran. Okay? So you can see Saudi Arabia is over here, and we X that out. You can see Africa, Ethiopia, we X that out. Neither of these places, even Israel, is not going to make it because Canaan stole it. So Mesha is right here in eastern Persia, or Iran today. And Josephus pins us down even further, I'll show you. Now, some scholars, and there's articles on this out there, believe it or not, even some of the Bible dictionaries will come right out and say, oh, well, Mesha, there's another Mesha mentioned in the Bible. That must be the one. Well, if you look at the second reference here, in 2 Kings 3:4, Mesha was the king of Moab. Okay, well maybe that's the Mesha. No. That Mesha, we know, because we found archaeology, lived in 840 BC. Joktan, Ophir, and their children lived in 2200 BC. That's 1400 years before this king of Mesha even existed. Oh, wait a minute, I said king of Mesha? He's not king of Mesha. He's the king of Moab. The nation where he lives is Moab. And actually, that is so extremely well recorded in Scripture because Moab was one of the sons of Lot, Abraham's nephew. So we know where Moab is. Moses knew where Moab was. Moses wrote about Moab. So there's no question that this king was the king of Moab and not the king of Mesha. And he was named 1,400 years later. So no, you can't hinge this on that guy. There's also two other Meshas mentioned in Scripture, but the same thing. They also have no naming prior to that, and they're after 840 BC, in fact. So Mesha is Mashhad, Iran. One last one, because we get a lot of comments on the YouTube channel. And people will push back on things, which is great, because it actually just makes the case stronger and stronger and stronger with things we don't think of in our research. Although we think of a lot. Josephus says that this place, Mesha, this is that same story with Latinized names. Sabaeus is Sheba, Ophir, Ulat is Havilah, and Jobab. So the same characters. So Josephus is telling the story. He's saying they inhabited from the Kofan and Indian River and in part of Aria adjoining it. Now this is something, it's very easy to track because the Kofan River is the Kabul River, very well known in history as the classic Kofis, and that's in Afghanistan. Saudi Arabia is not in Afghanistan, right? Okay. And then to complete Josephus' circle, he also pinpoints Aria. Aria is Iran. The origin of the word Iran are the Aryans. Okay? So that's where you get that word. You can hear that in Hitler's days, right? But the Aryans are Iran. So Josephus pinpoints this to the exact place we do. This is where they lived at the time of the Tower of Babel. But what's exciting is they take a journey to the east. Now, Bible dictionaries go crazy on this because what a lot of scholars will do, and this is really the easy road, and they need to test it further, and they just don't too often. And in this case, they definitely don't. They say that Zafar must be Safar. Why? Because it sounds the same. And that is it. That is the full logic that they're using. They obviously are not using logic, because if they were, they would do a little research and find out that Zafar, Yemen, okay, was founded the 2nd century BC, 2,000 years after this narrative. See, this is an ancient story, and it can't be understood from a Western perspective. That was one thing we had to just put aside, because you can't think that way. The Bible wasn't written in a Western perspective. It was written by the Israelites who lived in Israel. So when they say east, They're not talking about Saudi Arabia. They're talking about the Far East many times over. So we see this kind of thing, and really this reference probably is influenced by Islam. We'll show you other references that are influenced by other writings like the Talmud, which are not scripture. The International Standard Bible comes right out, and they say it's kafar. Okay, so now we have another place in Saudi Arabia, kafar. Okay, kafar, zafar. Another one they have is shafar, which is actually a Hebrew word, a different Hebrew word from safar. That should be easy to figure out, but unfortunately, in this instance, it just doesn't seem like many actually take the time to really research this out. We have, and we found that the word safar has a meaning in Hebrew. It means towards a numerous population. Okay? And the most populous place on earth today is in this red circle here. So 60% of the entire world lives in that general area. So that's a numerous population, right? But it gets far more detailed than that. So, again, Misha is Iran. And then it says they go to Safar, a mount of the east. Well, east. Kadim is the Hebrew word, means east, means front. But also means, in fact, it has meaning, going all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And this is interesting, because the Lord planted a garden in Genesis 2. Kadim. Now, translations say eastward, which is not a bad translation. It's fine, eastward. But let's look at the full meaning. It's east, antiquity. Okay, really, really old, really ancient. This is an ancient word. Front. That which is before. Aforetime. So before time. Ancient, from, of, old, earliest time, beginning. Mount of the east and Mount of the Orient. Eastward to or toward the east. The same word used in the Garden of Eden narrative as is used in this passage, showing where Ophir went. So where did they go? Well, they went to a place that ended up being named after Ophir. Ophir is known for gold throughout Scripture. It starts with Job, who mentions the gold of Ophir, and having a very great value. And there's a reason for that. I mean, this is gold, and there's other gold around the earth, but this gold has significance. Why? Because it was used in the original sacrifice of Adam himself in this land, now called Ophir in this time, and before the land of creation, the land of Adam and Eve. And I'll prove that. Now, David talks about the gold of Ophir, and he equates it with the gold of Sheba. He talks about queens wearing it. So this gold is very valuable for some reason, and there's a very good reason. Isaiah calls fine gold the golden wedge of Ophir. 2 Chronicles chapter 9 says, "For the king's ships," this is talking about Solomon, so we're back to Solomon's narrative here, "went to Tarshish with the servants of Hiram every 3 years." So what does this tell us? We have a 3-year round-trip journey. It took them a year to get there, a year to trade, plant, harvest, and then another year to get back. That is, in the language of explorers of that day, how they would have operated. Now, here's the funny thing. We have resources here. We love resources because we can test those. Because they tell you what land it might be talking about. And these are significant. We have gold, silver, ivory, apes, peacocks. Are there peacocks in the Philippines? Are there apes in the Philippines? What about elephants?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Yes, yes, yes. In fact, they've been mining gold, the first resource, according to Wikipedia, since 1000 BC, for 3,000 years. They've been mining gold in the Philippines. Okay, now, that's one reference. Then you look at today. Forbes magazine, New York Times, major economic journals. They're getting their reports from the mining companies themselves. They say, not us, that number 2 in gold reserves in the ground on all of Earth today, as of 2015, is the Philippines. Most people don't know that, because you'll see numbers where they track how much gold is being mined from different companies or countries. And a lot of times the Philippines is not mining as much because the government's not allowing it, which you can't blame them, frankly. So, as far as gold is concerned, is there gold in the Philippines? You better believe it. But it's even more significant than that. Elephants. Ivory is actually what it says. And ivory can be, derived from all kinds of sources, even tea. But we don't have to go there, because elephants did live in the Philippines. They know this because they've found fossils, number 1. And number 2, because when Pigafetta, the Italian scholar who came with Magellan, when he wrote, he said he saw elephants. There you go. So were they here? Yes. However, we get a lot of pushback on that. So I'm going to show you an article that nails it down in just a second. Okay, apes. Now, in biblical terms, the word "kaf" in Hebrew for apes is actually a long-tailed monkey. Pretty much every Bible dictionary we've looked at pretty much renders it that way. And here's what's funny. When you look at the Phoenician hieroglyphs from the Assyrian palace, you can't see this too clear here, but this is a monkey on top of his head. And here's another one down here. They're small monkeys with long tails. They're not big apes. And this is what the Phoenicians, okay, that's Solomon's navy. They were Phoenicians. This is what they brought with them from Ophir. And the funny thing is if you could zoom in, which I can't do really well here, but if you could really see this face, it's a baboonish-like face for this monkey. And here you have the Philippine long-tailed macaque, I believe that's how you say it, which is found all over the archipelago of the Philippines. So does Philippines have monkeys? Yes. Do they have the exact monkey pictured in ancient history? Yes, they do. So, check. And then the last one is peacocks. Now, some people may not have seen a peacock in the Philippines, but the Palawan peacock is native to the Philippines, and that's indisputable. So, you've got 4 resources that define a land. So far, all 4 check. Philippines, all 4. As far as elephants are concerned, there was an article in the Philippine Daily Inquirer, and it said that the Philippines had stegodon, which is the dinosaur elephant, basically the huge elephant with massive tusks, which they have unearthed. They found the bones, so they are here. They were here. Elephants, rhinos, okay? And these are named Rhinoceros philippinensis, okay? It's named for the Philippines. This is a native species. So that's really not something that is disputable. In fact, one of them, the dwarf elephant, is named after the anthropologist H. Otley Beyer. And, I mean, it's right there in history. It's named right after him, yet somehow there are actual references. I mean, when we started this, we went to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia once said that elephants were native to the Philippines, and they went extinct between the 1300s and 1600s. After Solomon's Gold series, that has changed. It now says that the Sultanate of Sulu introduced elephants into the Philippines between the 1300s and 1600s, and they went extinct. extinct. If they're not native to the Philippines, that's not even appropriate language. Why do they say things like that? Because they're confusing. This article nails it down though. They're not just talking about elephants from, or the rhinoceros, I believe they dated it 700,000 years. They have no means by which to date anything to 700,000 years. No possible way. But anyway, it seems that elephants roamed the Philippines not just in prehistoric times, but as late as the 17th century. It goes on to actually cite a work from 1668 from this particular Jesuit for which this whole narrative is written. And he comes out and even tells you that they used it for bracelets, ear pendants, daggers, sword hilts, and jewelry boxes. So is there ivory in the Philippines? Yes. In fact, the island of Holo is recorded as eating elephants. So unless they were imagining things, elephants lived here, right? So these things it's amazing what we've hit, because there's so many maps out there. We'll look at something and it'll say, okay, they're found here on Earth, and the Philippines won't be on there. And you find out, wait a minute, that's not just in the Philippines, it's the national tree, right? So we see this over and over again, and someone has obscured this message, but no longer. Now some say, well, South Africa is number 1 in gold. Philippines was number 2. South Africa is number 1. And it is today. And it has been for about the last 100 years. South Africa's gold rush was in 1852, really got started in 1884. So it's been about 100 years of mining gold in mass. The Philippines has been mining gold since 1000 BC. Okay, that's almost 3,000 years of a gold rush type mining ahead of South Africa. So who's number 1? The Philippines. Now they did find gold in South Africa, and it's in Muslim records back in 1100 AD. However, that's not 1000 BC, is it? It's 2100 years later. So there's no doubt who leads, but let's nail this down firmly and completely. Philippine jewelry, gold jewelry that came from the Philippines was found in Egypt in a dig dated to the 1st century AD. How did that get there? It couldn't have, based on the traditional narrative, because we're told that the Philippines has, they were an isolated community, and they were discovered by Magellan. Magellan didn't discover anything. There were already people here, people of culture that could read and write, and who were very wealthy. Now that's his words, not mine. That's what they observed. And I say we stick with what was observed rather than trying to obscure it in interpretation. So the Greeks had this famous island where they got their gold, their source of gold. And it's well recorded, it's well written about. Here's a couple of references. Christ, the Golden One, is the name given by ancient Greek writers to an island rich in gold that is east of India. Okay, east of India. That's a good start, but it goes more. Then there's an island of silver called Argyle as well. Now, Pergolus of the Erythraean Sea in the 1st century AD, he says that Christ, and he gives exact directions, the last part of the inhabited world toward the east, under the rising sun itself, and if that's not enough of a clue for everyone, beyond the land of China. Okay, what islands are east of China? It nails it down pretty well, but it gets more specific. They actually mapped it. And this is Pomponius Mela in 43 AD. See, in 43 AD, he knew where Ophir and Tarshish were. Tarshish is the land of gold, of silver. and Ophir is the land of gold. And on this map, if you could really read it, you will find, okay, we drew in the Red Sea port right here. This is where Solomon's navy was built and would have left from. They would have taken this course to the east. And this here is the island of Argyle. And this is the island of Christ, Ophir and Tarshish, on ancient maps. So they knew where these places were. This was not something that was unknown. It was no mystery, all the way up until the 1800s. Josephus calls Christ, in the Latin word, Aria, Aria Cheronesus, and he equates it to the biblical Ophir. So Aria equals Ophir. So if you can find Aria, you found Ophir, right? Well, we found Aria because Aria is the same place as Christ. And it's in the Philippines. So he goes on, though. One of the things that's interesting is he uses the word Aurea, A-U-R-E-A, right? What's the chemical symbol of gold? AU, right? And that comes from the Latin aurum, or aurea. The very origin of gold, the chemical symbol of gold, comes from the same land that we're talking about. Aurea, aurum, Ophir, it's all the same. Christ, it's all the same. It's the same land. And again, very well attested. If you look at history, here's just a brief timeline. In 1000 BC, and again, this is Wikipedia, so if someone wants to say, well, I don't believe Wikipedia. Okay, that's fine. Check out this history. In 200 BC, the Buddhist pilgrim Ai Tsing called this the Isle of Gold. The Greeks in 100 BC, Christ, the Isle of Gold. The Philippine gold was found in Egypt about 0 AD. 300 AD, the Chinese called it the Isles of Gold. Islam calls it the Land of Gold, even in 1200 AD. And Magellan, Pigafetta, de Morga, and all the Spanish writers lumped one accolade on top of another, on top of another, on top of another, that not only called this the Land of Gold, but labeled it Ophir and Tarshish. Again, it was no mystery. So when you look at this and then you realize South Africa over here didn't even discover gold until 1100 AD, okay, even if they want to argue with this reference of 1000 BC, what about all this? It's there. The Philippines has been mining gold since antiquity, and we go so far as to say since Adam and Eve. It is #1 in gold on all of earth, and there is no close second, not even South Africa. The neighbors called it, the Greeks called it the Golden One, the Chinese, the Isles of Gold, the Islands of Gold, the Indians, the Buddhist pilgrim, Isle of Gold, Chinese Mountains of Gold, Chinese Golden Neighbor, Muslims, Land of Gold. Do you think people may have, just maybe, knew where Ophir, the Land of Gold, was? Because history says it over and over and over. It is no mystery. The other place associated here is the Isles of Tarshish. Okay, Tarshish, when you read the scriptures about it, and there's many, we cover a lot more on the YouTube channel. Again, this is a condensed version. Thou breakest the ships of Tarshish with an east wind. 1 Kings. Jehoshaphat made ships of Tarshish to go to Ophir for gold. So the ships of Tarshish bring gold back from Ophir. And also, look at Jeremiah 10, silver spread into plates is brought from Tarshish. See, Tarshish is a place, and it's in the same area as Ophir. Same exact area. The two are equated in Scripture time and time again. Now, Tarshish also, again, known for silver, but it also has these other resources. It has iron, tin, and lead. Now, don't tell the British that there might be tin in the Philippines. Nah, couldn't be, right? Wrong. Every one of these 4 resources are found in the Philippines and in good bulk. We're not talking about a little teeny deposit for any of them. In fact, silver, this particular report that we brought up, shows in 2014, silver production was down almost half, but still their output was 23,000 kilos. That's a lot of silver. Iron ore, one of the Philippines' largest minerals. So again, these aren't just minerals. These are minerals in bulk. It doesn't mean they're being mined today. Again, if you just look at the mining reports, you may not find some of these things. And here's the reason. Here's an article from ABS-CBN. The Philippines has suspended the operations of the country's only iron ore miner due to environmental infractions. So the government's not allowing them to take it out of the ground, but it's still there, right? And that's what matters for this narrative. We need to prove that it's there. Tin. According to World Encyclopedia, tin mining takes place in Mindanao. Mindanao is Tarshish. Okay? So that's going to make a lot of sense. And then it's also listed on the list of resources. And then you have lead. And lead is also listed on the list of resources found in the Philippines. So we've tested 8 resources, and guess what? All 8 in these stories are found in the Philippines. These are not facts that can be disputed. Now, take any other land that makes the claim to be Ophir. Test them on those 8 resources alone, and you will not find a thing. The Philippines is the only land that has such a claim that fits. Now, what was this gold used for? It was used to overlay the walls of the temple. This passage says that the gold of Ophir was used to overlay the walls. However, there's another passage that calls it by a different name. And this is how brilliant the Bible is. See, this time, this passage says, he adorned the house, the temple of Solomon, with precious stones, and the gold was gold from Parvaim. Now, Parvaim is not a place in history that is a known place. Nobody knows where it is. But do you know what the word means? Orient. Eastern. This is gold from the Far East. But it gets better. Jeremiah mentions that the biblical gold is called the gold of Upaz. Now this was the clue that started us down this spiraling journey that led to so much. So this Upaz, Daniel mentions as well, fine gold of Upaz that he saw a belt of it in his dream. This Upaz is really interesting because this is the gold of the Pisan River. Now, you may not be familiar with the Pisan River. Pastor Paul mentioned it. That's one of the rivers from Eden. So you literally have one of the rivers from Eden tied to this narrative, this land of gold. And don't worry, it ties much more than this. We're just warming up. Okay, so this, perhaps a corruption, probably another name for Ophir. Upaz is Ophir. It's the same. And even when we look at it in Hebrew, this is a lot to look at on the screen. We have a chart on the side. We like to do this on the YouTube channel because people can pause the screen and they can look at the chart, they can look at each symbol and everything, and it's really good. But when you look at the ancient Hebrew, which we spend a lot of time on ancient Hebrew, especially in this land, because we find ancient Hebrew here. And we'll show you. Okay, so Upaz, when you look at the actual letters, Hebrew reads right to left. It starts with an A, an aleph, or an L. Okay, that's weird, because the Bible renders it as a U. Now go over here to Ophir, and you have the same thing. Here's the aleph, or the A. But it renders it with an O. Why? They both start with A. No, they don't just start with A. They both start with A, and then the second letter is Wa, which is U. U. These are Opaz, Ophir, the origin of the chemical symbol AU, the land of gold itself. And it's all right there. It's been right there in Scripture all along. But again, even Hebrew scholars are rendering these words. No Hebrew scholar, unless on purpose, would forget the A at the front of the word. There is more to this story. And there's a reason this is being done. Here's what's neat, though. When you look at the actual symbols of these Hebrew letters, each letter has a meaning and actually forms a whole sentence unto itself. So we took a look at these two words. What do they mean in ancient pictograph Hebrew? Here's what they mean. Opaz, which is the gold of the peace sun, ancient Havilah. Inhabiting and mining gold at the ends of the earth where Elohim is. Wow. That is prophetic. That is amazing. Then look at Ophir. The beginning, first man, exile, to inhabit and till the ground and worship Elohim at the ends of the earth. How did those meanings get there in those words? Referring, which will prove to you, to this land. It is impossible unless there's some kind of truth to it. But history doesn't just say nothing about Ophir and Tarshish. It records the Philippines as Ophir and Tarshish over and over and over again. And in our videos, we have a whole video, an hour long, of historic references calling this the land of Ophir and Tarshish. Columbus knew. That's where Columbus was going. He wasn't going to America. Columbus studied his Bible, and he studied history. And he left margin notes, and he left journals. And in his journals, he was specific that the land that he was going to was not America, nor did he ever think he found America. He thought he found the Philippines. That's where he thought he was. He called it, before his journey, Ophir, Tarshish, the Garden of Eden, and Arsarith, which is the name of one of the areas where the lost tribes of Israel settled. That's pretty serious. That's Columbus, not us. And when we hit those kind of references, we started taking note. Wait a minute, what did Columbus know? Well, he didn't know his directions very well because he never made it there, but he thought he did. Thank you. However, he knew something. He did his research. And he found this all in the Bible. It was right there. So we knew we were onto something. But this particular quote from Pigafetta, the Italian scholar, that came with Magellan, he says, Mindoro possessed great skill in mixing gold with other metals and gave it natural and perfect appearance that could deceive the best of silversmiths. The natives were also known for jewelries made of other precious stones, of Tarshish and Ophir. These guys, they knew. Magellan took a book that mentioned the people called the Lakoi in the Philippines, who were identified specifically by longitude and latitude as the very area of the Ilocanos, Lucos, Ilocanos, yeah, same word. And yet, again, that gets missed. It gets missed by historians. It gets missed by scholars. And there is a reason. Jeremiah talks about silver spread into plates is brought from Tarshish, okay, and gold from Upaz. We read that part, but let's read the rest. The work of the workman and of the hands of the founder, blue and purple is their clothing. They are all the work of cunning men. Now this is amazing, because the story Daniel's telling here sounds the same as what Pigafetta was saying when he came. That this people was so incredibly good at working with gold and silver that they could mix it with other metals and you would never know the difference. Does that sound like the Philippines? It does. Now, did Filipinos, were they ever known for wearing blue and purple? Did your ancestors wear blue and purple? Did someone maybe illustrate something like that? Yeah. This is the Boxer Codex. And the Boxer Codex shows blue and purple over and over. They were the colors, not of royalty. There were no royals. There were barangay captains. That was the system of government. And I'll show you. They say so. Now, a lot of historians laughed at this. This is from 1590 is when it was drawn. And they laughed at it and they said, oh, that can't possibly be. That can't be Filipinos. That's a fairy tale, right? Watch this.
Sa paglipas ng mga taon, ang mga sinaunang ginto na nahukay sa Surigao ay nauwi sa kamay ng mga dealer at palihim na naibenta sa mga maperang kolektor. Ang iba ay napunta pa nga sa ibang bansa.
Some of these gold objects had found their way in European collections already.
Men and women both wore jewelry. Actually, the men.
Si Dr. Florina Baker ang dating direktor at curator ng Gold of Ancestors ng Ayala Museum. Sa tansya raw ng mga eksperto, ang makalaglag pang ang gintong nahukay ni Berto ay hinubog noong ika-10 hanggang ika-13 siglo. Ibig sabihin, ginawa ang mga lahas 300 taon bago pa man napadpad si Magellan sa Pilipinas. Ani Baker, marami na raw siya nakitang hukay na ginto o archaeological gold mula sa Pilipinas, pero walang hihigit pa sa kasalukuyang exhibit.
Nothing of this scale and magnitude and magnificence has ever been seen.
Isuot ang sacred thread para madama ang bigat nito. Ito ang tinatawag na sacred thread, ang pinakaimportanteng pyesa ng gold collection ng Ayala Museum. Halos 4 na kilo ang timbang nitong gintong sablay. Wow! Uy, napakaganda. Uy, magkakapalo ka nito. Ang maganda. Pero higit pa sa bigat ng solid gold na sablay, humanga ako sa pagkakagawa nito. 3 iba-ibang layer ng ginto na may kani-kaniyang disenyo ang pinagpatong-patong sa pamamagitan ng pinong-pinong pagkakahabi ng sablay. Ang mga pampalanting bolitas na ito, hindi na raw ginagawa ngayon. Ungkod ng pulido ang pagkakagawa ng sablay at lalong kamangha-manghang isipin ginawa ito 1,000 taon na ang nakakaraan. Tunay nang walang kaparis ang Surigao treasure. At sa aming pagbabalik, sasaliwaan natin ang kalidad at antas ng yaman, kaalaman at pamumuhay ng ating mga ninuno nang una silang masilayan ni Magellan.
Okay, so this gold was found and dated about 1,000 to 1,300 AD. This was, what, 200, 300 years before the Spanish ever came. Okay? This was ancient Filipinos. And this is what history says about them. About their necks, they wore gold necklaces, wrought like spun wax and with links in our fashion, some larger than others. On their arms, they wore armlets of wrought gold, which they called calambigas, and which are very large and made in different patterns. Some wear strings of precious stones, wow, cornelians and agates, and other blue and white stones, which they esteem highly. They wear around the legs some strings of these pearls and certain cords, like maybe the sacred thread that you just saw, covered with black pitch in many foldings and garters. This is from 1609. 1609, after the Spanish came, they still have the same gold on their persons. Do you know how much gold this was? It was not a little. In 1574, Zamoranos. There are some chiefs in this island who have on their persons 10 or 12,000 ducats worth of gold in jewels. Now, a ducat, when you calculate that to today's terms, okay, 10,000 ducats is 1.5 million US dollars, and they wore that on their person in public. Wow. How many other lands in all of history have that record? You will be hard-pressed to find any. Any. And look at what they said. To say nothing of the lands, the slaves, the mines that they owned. This wasn't all they owned. There are so many of these chiefs. Okay, this is the higher rung. These are the barangay captains, basically. Okay, that was the ancient system. And by the way, if you go and you read the Bible and the system that Moses employed, it was very similar to that. Very similar. So funny how so many things like that tie right back. There are so many of these chiefs that they are innumerable. They cannot be numbered. That's a lot. Okay, now that's rung number 1. So we'll go down the level to the next level of the same quote. Likewise, the individual subjects of these chiefs have a great quantity of said jewels of gold, which they wear on their persons, bracelets, chains, earrings of solid gold, daggers of gold, and other very rich trinkets. Wow. Those were the average people. Okay, we're in the second tier, but let's not stop there. This quote then says, these are generally seen among them, and not only the chiefs, top rung, and the free men, the middle rung, but also even slaves possessed and wear gold trinkets on their persons openly and freely. Wow. This tells a different story from what I heard in the U.S. when I was a kid. All we ever heard about was the shoes of the First Lady, so we didn't know a whole lot of anything. But this story, as we research this, keeps coming up. It's over and over. There isn't just one reference. There's hundreds. It's all over. Is it taught in school books today? No, it's not. It should be. Right, Jennifer? But it's not. Maybe it will be. You never know. Now let's go back to Tarshish. Tarshish was not the brother of Ophir, right? That was Sheba. Ophir and Sheba are brothers. But there's this other guy, Tarshish. Where does he come in? Well, Japheth, the other brother of Shem, okay, Shem, Ham, Japheth. Japheth had a son named Javan, and Javan had other sons, okay? You'll also see Tyrus here, which is where the name Tyre comes from, Hiram, king of Tyre, all tied to the same narrative. But this is what's interesting. Tarshish and his brothers, Elisha, Kittim, Dodanim, or Dedan, however you want to say it, by these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their land. So, these sons inherited islands. But how did they get there? I mean, history tells us there were no boats back then, right? I mean, Noah goes and builds a super tanker, specs that we were not even able to duplicate until the 20th century. Yet we're supposed to believe that the 3 sons who helped Noah build the boat couldn't figure out how to build another one, even a small vessel. And there was a world ocean now after the flood that needed to be crossed. Really? Because that doesn't even make common sense, does it? The reality is they were building boats before the flood, for the flood, and after the flood. And there's absolutely no reason to consider anything else. Oh, because we didn't find archaeology. You got to find an actual boat. Aren't they made of wood? Doesn't wood deteriorate? What are you looking for? You're not going to find it, more than likely, unless we get lucky, find one petrified somewhere or something like that, which from time to time they do. Now remember we said that Joktan has a brother named Peleg. His father is Eber. Okay? So, and unto Eber were born 2 sons. The name of the first was Peleg. For in his days was the earth divided. We find that narrative in the Philippines, and I'll show you. And his brother's name was Joktan. Okay? These are the nations that were divided among the earth. And this whole listing in Genesis 10 is how the earth was distributed among Noah's 3 sons. The whole earth. They didn't leave land to chance. Noah was aware of the entire earth. And he mapped it all in the book of Jubilees, actually, which we'll go over a little in the next session. But we keep seeing this recurring theme, especially in Isaiah. Isaiah keeps talking about, keep silence before me, O islands, and let the people renew their strength. Let them come near, then let them speak. Let us come near to judgment, which is a key because there's a prophecy about this land of Sheba that deals with this. Who raised up the righteous man from the east. Okay? Now, this scripture is not referring to one man. The word in Hebrew, man, is also men. It's the same word. And could be either. This is a people. And we'll talk about that. He had not gone with his feet. Why? Because there's 7,000 islands. He took a boat. He took a ship. The isles saw it and feared. The ends of the earth were afraid, drew near, and came. This is the recurring theme we keep seeing in Isaiah. He talks about these islands in the east. Okay, what islands are in Israel? None. What islands are in Saudi Arabia? None, just rocks. They don't have islands, they have rocks. And they call them rocks. Keep going. You get to Sri Lanka when you get to India. That's island, that's not isles. The isles that are east of Israel are the Indies. There are no significant isles until then, not isles. So when you follow this through, we keep seeing in Scripture all the kings of Tyrus. Now you Tyre. Okay, this is the passage basically of Solomon's navy. This is a rebuke of them, in fact. But it says, of the isles which are beyond the sea. What sea? The Arabian Sea. The Indian Ocean. What islands are beyond the Indian Ocean? To the east, I wonder. Jeremiah talks about these isles afar off. But some will say, oh, well, maybe they're talking about Greece. Well, these are usually identified with the east, and Greece is not east of Israel. But let's consider Greece. The most pagan islands on the planet. They're not worshiping the Creator God. That's not something they do. It's not something they did. So ultimately, they're talking about some other isles here. They're not talking about Britain. First, they're not east. Okay. Sing unto the Lord a new song and praise from the ends of the earth. Ye that go down south to the sea and all that is therein, the isles and the inhabitants thereof. Psalm says, let the multitude of isles be glad. What isles? He's not talking about Greece. He's talking about the Philippines. They are the isles in the east. Again, don't worry. We're going to nail this down today to a point where you will leave here knowing exactly where these isles are. We have geography that is indisputable. And it leads to the Garden of Eden. It's amazing. Also, we know there are a multitude of isles. There are many isles. So we keep seeing this over and over in Scripture. Ophir is a real-life land of abundant gold. It also has bdellium, which is pearl, and the onyx stone. And we'll cover that. And those actually pinpoint the exact Philippines and an exact land of creation. We'll show you. We'll prove it scientifically. There's only one Ophir, remember that, in Scripture. So when we're talking about Ophir, we know exactly what the Bible's talking about. There is not a second one. So there's no second guessing. It's not necessary. He was the son of Joktan. He headed east to the Orient with his brothers Sheba, which is a key, because we see Sheba in the passage. We'll talk about that. He was not Cush's or Ham's son. He was the son of Joktan, or Joktan actually in Hebrew. And he is the one that went to the east. He did not go to the west. So you rule out Africa, you rule out Saudi Arabia immediately, just based on very minor directions, let alone the big ones that are coming. The ships of Tarshish travel to Ophir, and there they get gold from Ophir, and they get silver from Tarshish, which are the same region. I'm going to prove to you after the break, so is Sheba. The Queen of Sheba came from this same land. Where Tarshish also, because he and his brothers were the mariner sons who boated because they inherited islands, so they figured out how to boat. They had ships. Remember where Ophir lived? They lived in Iran, all the way up in the eastern portion of Iran. Not going to have ships there. They're fairly landlocked. There's some rivers, but generally he wasn't a boater. So that's where Tarshish comes in. And we find references to Tarshish, we'll show you, in Mindanao, in the southern part of the island. We also know that Tarshish, okay, his father was Javan. Javan is the father of Greece. Wait a minute, didn't we say that Greece's source of gold was the land of Ophir and Tarshish? See, it all comes full circle. Tarshish was Greek, and he even spoke Greek. And we'll show you that too. We find Greek in Mindanao. And we find that all of these things tie to one nation on all of earth. Could not possibly tie to anyone else. So we'll get there. Ophir is the land of post-flood gold. So the gold after the flood, the land that's reported, you've probably heard of El Dorado, right? Well, Ophir is El Dorado. It's not in South America. It's here. This was the land of gold. So Ophir, Sheba, is also in the land of Ophir. Parvaim, which is another scripture used to refer to the gold used to overlay the walls of the temple. Parvaim means orient or east, and is Ophir, which is in the east, which is in the orient. Upaz is specifically the gold of the Pison River, which surrounds a land called Havilah, which we'll test after the break. So, and when we do, you're going to find that that one reference actually means very little support, because that one reference nails down exactly what this land is by the resources. You can test them. And Philippines tests as number one in all three resources found in that land, which means it couldn't be anybody else. It's indisputable. So, Tarshish and his brothers also lived in the land of Ophir, and then, again, ancient Havilah is what the land was called before the flood. And it's in Genesis 2, when it talks about the rivers from Eden, which we're going to get into after the break. So we're going to take you on a journey this afternoon And we're going to prove to you, we're going to tie this together in such a way that you're going to see that the Philippines is Ophir, it's Sheba, it's Tarshish, and yes, it's all three of those lands. Can't be anything else. It is ancient Havilah, where Adam and Eve lived. It is the land of the Garden of Eden. And it is the land of creation. Now that sounds like a really big claim, doesn't it? Well, it is. It is. And we'll show you who made it, because it wasn't us. We're not making claims. We're proving. We go through the Bible. We test it. We test it with history, geography, science, archaeology, everything. And when we do, it tells the full story. And you know what? It's so hard to argue with that no one really can. We put this out 2 years ago. That's when we started this series on YouTube. We chose YouTube as a platform because we could reach, many thousands quickly and just get the message out and just let the Holy Spirit do what the Holy Spirit does. 2 years ago, we released these findings, and they lead to exactly what I just said. And in 2 years, no one has been able to disprove it. No one. There have been attempts, but no one's been successful. And the reason is because this is truth. This is Bible. It's based on the Bible, first of all, which is where we should always build our foundation, right? But better, the history and all the other disciplines, they just nail this down. They nail this down so well. So you're going to see it for yourself. But before, check this out. And after the break, we're going to prove to you who Sheba really is. The wealthiest woman in all of history. And she came from the Philippines. Nowhere else. All else is rolled out. So, we'd like to thank our gracious host for hosting this conference today, and all of you for coming. We're going to go ahead and take a break for lunch, and we'll reconvene after.